right. So welcome back, everybody, to our latest episode of The Nest. So yesterday we were unfortunately not able to release a preview of the first game for the Patriots against the Miami Dolphins. And thus we are coming here today with a special episode where we recap the Patriots 20-7 loss to the Dolphins earlier today. So we're going to be talking about that and then looking a little bit ahead to next Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So joining me for today's episode are Anirban Chakraborty and Rohan Venkatesh. How's everyone doing?
Good as always. Good to be here. It's let's go Pats, right? It's first game of the season, so it's good to be off the mark on that. I wish the result had gone differently, but here we are, post game. Here we are. So let's break it down one by one.
Yep. Thanks for having me. So get the show on the road.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just talk about the Patriots first, like on offense. So obviously that was the big question and kind of the biggest disappointment from today. Mac Jones, only 21 of 30, 213 yards, 1 touchdown, threw an interception, though that was also kind of controversial because that was probably a pass interference penalty by Xavier Howard on Devontae Parker, but he also lost a fumble, which was recovered for a touchdown by the Dolphins. So all in all, he did struggle a bit. Tua Tagovailoa for the Dolphins, 23 of 33, 270 yards, 1 touchdown on a 4th and 7 to Jalen Waddle. That was just sort of the breakdown. Damien Harris led the Patriots for 9 carries, 48 yards. For the Patriots receiving, it was Jacoby Myers, 4 catches, 55 yards. And Tyreek Hill led all players with 8 catches for 94 yards. And Jalen Waddle, 4 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. So that was just sort of the statistical breakdown of today's game. So let's just talk about this first. What are your thoughts? Like overall, like for me, I was a little disappointed by the offense. Like I don't think Mac Jones ever looked fully ready or comfortable in this game. I think early on I liked what he was doing, but after that first drive, he really struggled a bit. And I don't know, it was just a lot of struggles that's just sort of accumulated over time, a lot of mistakes they made, and it was just too much to overcome today.
Well, I got to say that my expectations were probably pretty low to begin with. I mean, considering that the Dolphins were favorites heading into this, and I mean, you just kind of have to accept that the Patriots have kind of declined. It's not the same Patriots team that it was a few years ago. That said, though, I mean, when the Patriots had that opening drive, I mean, things did look pretty good. I mean, they're mixing it up, pass plays, rush plays, and Mac Jones had a variety of targets. Even that pick at the very end, I don't necessarily blame Mac Jones for that pick. It was kind of one of those wild plays where like it goes into the end zone, and I mean I personally think that was a botched call on the refs. I mean like his arm was clearly in like Devontae Parker's. It looked like he was pretty much in Devontae Parker's face. So if that's not pass interference, it's really hard to know what pass interference really is. I mean, if that's not pass interference, then we should just throw out the rule because at this point that rule is meaningless. And at the time, it just seemed like an unfortunate break, and that was pretty much the story of the entire first half. I mean, like where I mean that when the Dolphins went the other way, they got a field goal off of that, and then later on, Mac Jones had that blunder with that fumble, which pretty much led to the first touchdown of the game, which ironically ended up being a defensive touchdown. But all that said, right? I would have to say that at halftime, I got my thoughts were okay when they were down 17-0. It looked pretty bad. I'm not denying that, and it was pretty bad. Despite that, though, I wasn't really feeling too negative about the Patriots at the time. Partially because A, I had low expectations, and B, because most of the points that the Dolphins had scored were basically off of 2 plays. Yeah, they were big plays and they were consequential, but sometimes those unlucky breaks do happen. And of course, the Patriots did improve things in the second half. It just didn't really seem to be enough, and Mac Jones wasn't at his sharpest, to put it kindly. So I guess maybe you just have to get these bad games out of the way. Historically, I mean, when the Patriots go down to Miami and play the Dolphins, especially early on in the season, it hasn't really gone well. I guess in that sense, you can say that history has repeated itself. But I know this Patriots team, and I know that they're resilient. So I expect them to study the film and break it down play by play and have a better showing against the Steelers next week.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree about the pass interference call, and I think that's kind of what a consensus is. But I do think at the same time, I mean, I don't want to use that as an excuse for the whole game because I do think teams need to be resilient against that. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like on average, you'll get some calls against you, you'll get some calls in your favor throughout the season, and I mean, even if that was like a botched PI call early in the game, I mean, I still don't think that necessarily that shouldn't like we still should have had better offense for the game than that one call. Um, I do want to say, we did hear about Mac Jones getting some X-rays after the game that apparently came back negative, but there's some questions about whether he had a back injury or something. And I do want to point out like a few things here. First of all, we saw some really strange kind of like missed looks from Mac Jones, even from like 5 or 6 yards out. I think he one time just like missed like I want to say he missed like Aguilar or Devontae Parker like completely. Overthrew I think Devontae Parker on another route or Nelson Aguilar. So I do kind of wonder because like last season, like say what you will, like Mac Jones was a pretty efficient and tidy player when it came to like short 5 to 10 yards. You didn't see him just randomly missing throws complete like that. So I really do hope that that wasn't like because of some back injury. And I guess the other part about the offense that I feel like it was just it to me it looked very confused, right? It looked very confused offense to me. Like not everybody was on the same page. And I think it was very clear by the fact that there were multiple plays where Mac Jones was literally directing players on where to go. Like on the fourth down where he threw, I believe, into it might have been Devontae Parker like triple coverage on fourth down. And he was literally directing people on where to go. He was directing the O line on where to go in the middle of the play, literally like after the snap. And to me, that just seems to be a sign of a poor play design or some problems with offensive coordinators. I mean, the whole point of having an offensive coordinator or coach is for them to kind of nail out these things beforehand. If you have your QB literally directing your O line on where to block or your receivers on where to run in the middle of a play, like consistently, then to me that's a big problem. All right, that shouldn't be the job of the quarterback in the middle of the snap. Their job should be to find the person who's open because everyone else knows what their job is and knows what they're doing. So the fact that he had to do that to me suggests that people were not on the same page. And for weeks we've been hearing about this kind of ghost offensive coordinator that the Patriots have with Joe Judge or Patricia. No one knows who exactly is in charge here. And when issues like this come up, that's a problem because that means the accountability is very confusing. We don't know who exactly was responsible for drawing up whatever play that was going on at the time. We have no idea, right? Last season, when Nick Folk went to like take a field goal against the Buccaneers and missed and we lost, we at least knew that Josh McDaniels was the guy who probably arranged for that, for better or for worse. This season, when you have play designs where like Mac is throwing into triple coverage, or we have like a 2nd and 17 where the Pats decide to run the ball and get stuffed, you don't know who exactly is in charge there, and that just makes it, I think, a little difficult from the perspective of outsiders to really evaluate how the decision making is going. No one knows what's going on here, so I think the accountability is something that we really need to kind of figure out going forward, at least on the offensive side.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with that. I think is a problem. Just like the lack of involvement by Kendrick Bourne today. I'm not entirely sure why he didn't get more playing time because the one play he made was probably the best play of the game for the Patriots on offense when he had that 41-yard catch or 44-yard catch. He made a terrific play on that. And I've heard like a lot now through the news that like he's having issues with the coaching staff on implementing a new offensive scheme. So, and if he does get traded, then I think that's just going to hurt the Patriots even more. Last year, Bourne was one of the best receivers for the Patriots. So if you lose him, then all of a sudden the offense, which is already kind of suspect, gets even worse. So I think overall, this is just kind of an indictment on sort of the coaching staff right now. I think it's just everything is just sort of a mess and upheaval. Like Joe Judge, we saw what he did with the New York Giants and Daniel Jones. Already one game in, Mac Jones looks not even close to the player he was last season. So obviously things can change. It is just one game. We still have 16 more to go. Hopefully more than 16 that they make the playoffs, but it's not looking good. Like it's pretty bad. And I'm going to just also point this out because the Patriots are right now, the first 4 games, including today against Miami, Next is Pittsburgh, who just beat Cincinnati today, the defending AFC champions. Then the Ravens, then the Green Bay Packers. Now, obviously, the Packers look really bad too. So maybe that's a winnable game after all, but that is at Lambeau Field. But anyways, your next three opponents are against Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Green Bay. And though that's a worrying start to the schedule. It will soften up afterward, though who knows, right? I mean, Detroit today scored 35 points against the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Bears after that also just beat the San Francisco 49ers. So that's the thing. We can't really just rely and assume that the teams last year who were bad are just going to be bad this year too. So at this point, the Patriots are definitely kind of they're in sort of deep water. They're sort of in a mess right now. And I'm not sure how you're going to be able to fix it mid-season or just in the season. So I am concerned, and especially with Mac Jones now, potentially, if he does miss time, I don't know what the status of his back injury is. They're making it very kind of, I guess, secretive, which I can't blame them. But if he has to miss any time, the Patriots are in even more trouble because Brian Hoyer is not a starting quarterback in this league at this point. So if Brian Hoyer has to start a game, that is pretty much an automatic loss for the Patriots at this point. So I don't know. There's just too many problems I'm sort of seeing right now. And it's just easy to sort of it's easy to say the season is early, but I think there are a lot more bigger problems that I don't think can just be solved this season.
Yeah, I guess the biggest question is, what are the adjustments that the Patriots can make within a week before our match against Pittsburgh? So first of all, I mean, I know we talked about the offense. I think the defense more or less didn't need too much work. I would say that was probably the only silver lining from this entire game, that we kept hearing how the Patriots secondary is going to get torched by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And, barring that one really, really unfortunate play where Jalen Waddle scored a 4th down touchdown, 2 seconds left in the end of the first half. I mean, I do want to point out, our game on Tyreek Hill was quite strong. He had 94 yards, but I think what the Patriots did was they kind of always had a player or two within his immediate vicinity to kind of immediately challenge him, because Tyreek Hill's most dangerous quality is yards after catching. And there were multiple plays where Kyle Duggar, especially, who's also a really athletic safety, was able to actually stuff him for a pretty low gain after he caught it. Even Jack Jones, our rookie cornerback, had a very close play, contested catch, which he almost picked off from Tyreek Hill, I thought, but Tyreek came down with it. But I do want to say, at least on that front, I can't really blame the defense for this loss. I think they did a pretty reasonably good job containing the kind of more explosive passing game, especially from the perspective of the secondary. I think one thing that is interesting is kind of the difference just between how many times the Dolphins were able to, on 3rd down or whatever, rely on kind of some quick speed play from Chase Edmonds or Raheem Mostert, and we just couldn't really seem to get that going for us on our own offensive scheme, and I'm not totally sure why that's the case. I think on O-line, at least, I do want to highlight, today we saw Cole Strange debut, who was our 1st-round pick in the last year's draft, and I think he kind of started a little shaky, kind of missing a few tackles in the first early plays, but I think as the game went on, he did kind of become a more stable force. But again, I do want to stress the biggest thing for me entering the next week is communication. I think that is at the root of our current problems on offense. I mean, the strip fumble on Mac Jones was, by a lot of accounts after the game, a miscommunication between him and Trent Brown on how to cover the extra linebacker who was coming in on the blitz. And yeah, Mac Jones should have checked the blind side, but I guess he didn't, because he thought Trent Brown would pick him up. So again, another problem of communication that directly led to points being on the board for Miami. So for me, that's really the biggest thing that they can work on. I do want to say, I mean, I think people kind of need to understand that this is the team we have this season, and not only that, but Mac Jones is a quarterback that we have for the foreseeable future. So like it or not, you have to make it work. So the question is, how can we make it work? There's a lot of stuff going around about how it's time to move on our quarterback and stuff, and to me, that's just really not anywhere near the kind of discussion we need to be having right now. To me, it's that, this is the team we have, like it or not. Our receiving core is what it is. Our quarterback is who he is. We have to make the most of it, and I think the biggest thing we can do in then a week is really focus on the communication aspect and really make sure that everybody's on the same page, so that when the snap happens, Mac Jones can just focus on getting the ball to whoever's on their route and whoever's open.
Yeah, I also just wanted to point out Nelson Aguilar at the very end. That fumble was just a complete killer, just because at that point the Patriots at least still had like a slim chance. And I thought Mac was actually sort of like in the second half, he did like a slightly better job moving the football down the field. Like the one touchdown drive, I thought he did a good job overall. And I think the defense was outstanding today. Like, I mean, considering everything, like considering who the Dolphins have on offense, like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Tua is still not that great. So, and I do think that that will hinder Miami's chances of really having a real Super Bowl contender chance with him at the quarterback position. But he did enough to win today. But I mean, I think overall the defense was actually not the issue. Like I think 13 points most weeks, especially with an offense with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you'll take 13 points. Last year, for example, the Patriots allowed 17 points and I think 27 points on defense in the 2 Miami losses. So overall, the defense was okay, especially all things considered. But I don't know. I think let's just quickly move on to Pittsburgh now, unless anyone else wants to mention anything from today's loss.
Now let's get to the Steelers.
Yeah, so obviously we will be covering them more deeply next week, but we will just sort of talk about the Steelers a little bit today. You know, next week we'll have a preview for the Steelers, so we'll talk in depth about them then. But I think overall, like I think Pittsburgh is sort of, at least at a high level, I'll just say Pittsburgh seems like they sort of have like a similar type of offense to Miami in the context of they don't have a great quarterback. Trubisky, I thought, did the job today. So he is like a kind of a high functioning what do you call it? System quarterback, like a game manager. Trubisky, I thought, did a good job today managing the game and the flow for Pittsburgh. But overall, I think the Steelers have a kind of a similar offense. Like they have good wide receivers, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Chase Claypool. On offense, pretty good running back in Najee Harris, though he got injured today. So it'll be interesting to sort of see how Belichick game plans against Mike Tomlin. He does have Mike Tomlin and the Steelers numbers over the year, but that was also with Tom Brady as the quarterback. So a lot of this now is hard to see, but that's sort of my takeaway. It's going to be interesting to see how they game plan against Pittsburgh, because that's going to be another road game. And Steelers do have a very good defense, though they did also lose TJ Watt today to likely a torn pectoral muscle, I believe. That's what they're saying as an injury. And that would be a massive loss for Pittsburgh's defense, as he's the defensive player of the year. So he's their best defensive player, the anchor of that defense. So obviously, it'll be one of those situations. You're on the road against a good defense, a well-coached team with Mike Tomlin there, and a pretty good offense. So can the defense continue to sort of play well? And can Mac Jones this time have better chemistry with his offense around him? That's sort of what I'll be looking for next Sunday.
Yeah, I think it can only get better from here. I mean, this seemed like one of those exceptionally bad games for Mac Jones, and of course, I mean, knowing him, I mean, he's the type of guy who's going to want to improve on his performance. So I would hope that he's going to examine that film to death, right? Basically, all the plays that went wrong during this game, reanalyze that fumble that he gave up, and pretty much guard against situations like that. I mean, maybe arguably in that scenario, the offensive tackle should have done a better job protecting him. But I mean, as a quarterback, you should also be expect those kinds of things. But I think that this is just kind of like a cold start. And just because Mac Jones has started out this way, I don't think that's gonna be this way for the rest of the season. Granted, I did say something similar last year. I believe last year when the Patriots were kind of struggling early in the season, I said at the time that they were messing up fundamentals, and that all it took was for them to fix those things, but then those issues kind of linger throughout the season, and that's kind of what eventually led to their downfall. Obviously, there are other more like systemic issues, like with that Pats roster. I'm just hoping that that's not the case over here. But in the worst case scenario, if this team needs a rebuild, then it's something for Coach Belichick and others on the coaching staff to kind of see how all the players kind of fit together as almost like chess pieces. But in the meantime, though, there's going to be a lot of a lot of strategizing that needs to go on, and as Anirban mentioned, communication as well, because it seemed, because more than anything, today looks sloppy and disorganized, and there's just no better way of putting it. But I would hope that it's not going to be this bad next week.
Yeah, I guess the big question is going to be, like what exactly are the changes we'll make on offense going to that game? I mean, looking at the Steelers game today, they had 11 hits on Joe Burrow, which, I mean, we all know that the offensive line last season was kind of the Achilles heel for the otherwise explosive Bengals offense, and it seemed like that was again the case today. But the Patriots have had some problems with offensive line. We did have Mac Jones getting sacked like today as well. So I'm sure that the Pittsburgh Steelers like pass or really, I guess their primary kind of line is going to be really active against us. But I think the other kind of big question is, can we kind of like I think it's like kind of can we really get more kind of constant like plays happening, get more first downs, and I think kind of being able to adapt more to the game. I think what I noticed today that I didn't really like was that we kept really doing run plays and into times like second and long when it just didn't really make sense to do it. Like I don't really know why you would run on a 2nd and 17. I mean, if you assume you get like 6 yards a carry, that's considered a good thing. You still end up at like 3rd and 11, and you have to throw anyway. So why not? They're just random plays like that seem more like they were just kind of designed like in advance rather than tailored to the game. So I really do hope there's a little more flexibility in the play calling there. Though again, you mentioned for the Steelers offense, I'm not really worried about that. Like you mentioned, Mitch Trubisky is a game manager. I mean, look at Deontay Johnson; he had 55 passing, like receiving yards today. The touchdown that was caught was by Najee Harris, who's actually injured right now, unfortunately. Wishing him all the best in his recovery. But yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game next week. Unfortunately, the way it's looking right now is probably going to be which defense can kind of show up more, and then at the end of the day, if you give me the Steelers offense versus Patriots, I still think I pick the Patriots because I think they have more depth that kind of I think they have like a deeper kind of team that can kind of withstand injuries. Like for example, like a player like Najee Harris. We don't have a player like him or Johnson, but I do think we have a more deep team and who can catch the ball. And I do think Mac Jones can do more for us on offense than Mitch Trubisky would. So I still do like the Patriots in this matchup. I think compared to before today's, I guess, Dolphins game, I do now think it's going to be much more of a low scoring kind of defense first type of game.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see, but we'll cover the Steelers more next weekend before the preview. But yeah, that's sort of our episode today. Kind of short. We're just sort of recap the Patriots' loss. Obviously, still a lot of football left to go, but there are also a lot
The
of
2014 season started with a loss in Miami. Let's just remember that.
I do want to sort of push back on this a little bit because I've been hearing this a lot where people will be like, oh, remember how 2014 went? Or remember when the Patriots had this loss, or remember when this quarterback had this like lost a bad game. Like I just also want to push back a little bit on this because this has been sort of something I've been hearing a lot now. Like, yes, other quarterbacks and other teams have had bad losses, but they also have the track record and they had a resume of a lot of games that really gave you confidence that that was really just more of an outlier. At this point in Mac Jones's career, he's played like just over a season now, just over one season now he's been playing. So right now he hasn't earned that yet. He hasn't earned this distinction of like given the benefit of the doubt for bad games because he hasn't done enough in this league. That's not his fault, but it's also not enough for us to just sort of say, oh, like remember how it worked in 2014? They had Tom Brady as the quarterback, the greatest quarterback of all time. So when they started 2-2 and lost to Kansas City that week, 41-14 on that Monday night game, you still had confidence because you knew Tom Brady was still capable of being a great quarterback because we've seen him doing it year in, year out. We haven't seen Mac Jones sort of do that yet. Maybe if like Mac Jones, like, so that's sort of one thing I want to push back a little bit, just sort of looking back at like prior seasons and just sort of using that as a benchmark. It's true it happened, but different circumstances were sort of there, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair
I'll grant you
point.
that it's definitely not the same team. I just wanted to throw that in just so that all hope isn't lost.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think what I was saying earlier is that I feel like we need to be careful not to put the pendulum the other way too. That precisely because they don't like I feel like our logic as fans here is, like absolutely that he's only been around for a year. We don't have as much data to say a bad game is an outlier, but we also don't have enough data to say that bad game is who he is as a quarterback. And I think that's what I'm kind of talking about, that I feel like, the pendulum kind of shifts both ways there. Like on one hand, it's absolutely fair to say that we can't just call this an outlier because for all we know, he might be, this might be the kind of game that he performs. But at the same time, it's also too early, in my opinion, to say that this is who he is as a quarterback. I think that's what my problem is. I think at the end of the day, like I said earlier, the fact is we've had him for a year. Last season, we had the training wheels on for a lot of the season. I mean, I was mentioning Nick Foles' kick against the Buccaneers. They didn't trust Mac Jones on that kind of game-winning time to play, brought out a field goal. So this is really the first season where really the onus is entirely on him because of the kind of offense that we have. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like, he doesn't have as much game experience, so let's just wait and see what happens. All right. At the end of the day, he's our quarterback for the time being. Let's just give it some time and give it some more weeks and see how he does. I don't think now is the time to hit the panic button, just as now is not the time to say, oh, everything's rosy because, Tom Brady or something. I think both things are kind of on two extremes, so we need to be careful to stay in the center on that.
No, that's true too. I think that's the thing. We'll have to sort of just give him some more time to figure this out because he's dealing with a tough situation with a new offensive coordinator and new coaches, players who don't seem very satisfied with the roles right now, all sorts of things that the Patriots have to work with right now. So we'll see. Next Saturday, we'll be back to preview the Steelers in a more in-depth manner, but that is today's episode. Obviously kind of short, but we will be back again next Saturday to preview. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone, and we will see you again next week.
All right, peace.